Listen closely, my friends. What if the person you keep abandoning every day is yourself? You give people your patience, your attention, music, your forgiveness, and your best energy, then come home to a mind that constantly, music, tells you that you are not enough. You keep chasing approval, affection, success, music, and a better version of yourself, hoping that one day you will finally feel worthy. But what if the life you are trying so, music, desperately to improve cannot become peaceful until you learn how to stand, music, beside the person you already are? Loving yourself first does not mean becoming selfish, arrogant, music, or obsessed with your own importance. It means refusing to treat yourself like an enemy while you are trying to build a better, music, life. The Stoics understood something most people discover, music, far too late. You cannot build inner peace by constantly declaring war on yourself. You can correct your flaws, music, without despising yourself. You can demand more from yourself without believing you are worthless. Think about Marcus, music, Aurelius. He was surrounded by power, responsibility, war, betrayal, and uncertainty. Yet his deepest battle was, music, never simply against the world outside him. It was against the disorder within. He repeatedly reminded himself to return, music, to his own character, his own judgment, his own conduct. That is where, music, real self-respect begins. Not in looking perfect, but in becoming someone you can trust when, music, nobody is watching. And maybe that is why you feel exhausted. You are not only fighting, music, life's problems, you are fighting yourself while facing them. Every mistake becomes evidence against you. Music, every rejection becomes a verdict on your worth. Every comparison becomes another reason to hate the life you have. But today we are going to break that, music, pattern. In this video, you will discover 6 powerful Stoic, music, lessons for learning to love yourself first. Not through empty affirmations or pretending everything is perfect, but through discipline, acceptance, self-respect, and a, music, deeper understanding of who you are. Because the goal is not to convince yourself that you are flawless. The goal is to become so at peace with yourself that you no longer need the world to constantly prove that you matter. Lesson 1, Stop, music, making your worth depend on other people. One of the deepest ways you betray yourself, music, is by allowing other people's reactions to become measurements of your worth. One person ignores your message and suddenly, music, you question yourself. Someone chooses another person and you wonder what you lacked. Someone criticizes, music, you, and instead of asking whether their words are true, you immediately ask, what is, music, wrong with me? Slowly, without realizing it, you hand, music, strangers the authority to decide how you feel about yourself. Imagine a man standing in front of a mirror every morning. But instead of looking at his own reflection, he looks at the faces of everyone around him. If they smile, he feels valuable. If they approve, music, he feels attractive. If they reject him, his entire identity collapses. Music, that sounds absurd, but emotionally millions of people, music, live exactly this way. They don't have a stable sense of self. They have a collection of other people's opinions stitched together and mistaken for identity. The Stoics challenged this entire way of living. Epictetus, music, repeatedly returned to the distinction between what belongs to us and what, music, does not. Your choices belong to you. Your character belongs to you. Your effort belongs to you. But another person's opinion, affection, music, attention, or approval does not. So why build your self-worth, music, on something you were never given control over in the first place? Marcus Aurelius lived surrounded by people who could praise him in the morning and betray him, music, by evening. Imagine allowing every political opinion, every, music, insult, every rumor, and every person's approval to determine your emotional state. He would have been mentally imprisoned by the, music, crowd. Instead, Stoicism demanded something harder. Return to your own character. Ask not, do they approve of me? Ask, am I acting according, music, to the person I want to be? That question changes everything. If someone, music, dislikes you because you refuse to betray your values, their rejection is not proof, music, that you are unworthy. If someone walks away because you established a healthy boundary, music, their absence is not evidence that you should have abandoned yourself. And if, music, someone fails to recognize your value, you do not need to spend your life standing outside their door begging them to see what you should have learned to, music, see within yourself. There is a difference between self-worth and self-improvement that most people completely misunderstand. Music, you can say, I need to become more disciplined, music, without saying I am worthless. You can admit I made a terrible mistake without turning it into I am a, music, terrible person. One statement identifies a behavior. The other attacks, music, and identity. Growth becomes almost impossible when every correction is accompanied, music, by self-hatred. Think about a sculptor working on a piece of marble. When he sees something that needs, music, to be removed, he does not hate the stone. He simply understands that the finished form, music, requires patience, pressure, and refinement. Your flaws can be, music, treated the same way. You don't need to destroy yourself to improve yourself. You need enough self-respect to tell yourself the truth without turning, music, that truth into a weapon. This is where real self-love becomes much deeper than the modern idea of simply feeling good about, music, yourself. Sometimes loving yourself means refusing the easy escape. It means getting out of bed when your mind wants another excuse. Music, it means walking away from someone who repeatedly, music, disrespects you. It means admitting that your habits are hurting your future. It means saying no when you desperately want to be liked. Self-love, music, is not always comfort. Sometimes self-love is the courage to stop betraying yourself. There is a powerful psychological, music, reason this matters. When your sense of worth constantly depends on external validation, your brain begins scanning the social world for threats and approval. A delayed message becomes, music, significant. A changed tone becomes significant. A lower number of likes becomes significant. You start monitoring everyone because you are unconsciously asking the same, music, question again and again. Am I still enough? And the more you search outside yourself for the answer, the less stable you become inside. Music, that is why some people can receive 100 compliments and still feel insecure. The problem was never a shortage of compliments. The problem was that compliments were being used as temporary medication for an, music, internal wound. The moment the praise disappears, the insecurity, music, returns. But when your worth becomes anchored in your character rather than the crowd, praise becomes enjoyable without becoming, music, necessary, and criticism becomes information without becoming a verdict. So begin with something brutally simple. The next, music, time someone rejects you, criticizes you, ignores you, or fails to choose you, pause before judging yourself. Ask 3 questions. Music, did I act with integrity? Did I do what was within my control? Is there something, music, useful I can learn from this? If the answer is yes, take the lesson and leave the shame behind, music, because you were never meant to spend your entire life auditioning for permission to respect yourself. The world will change its opinion of you constantly. Music, some people will admire you. Some will misunderstand you. Some will, music, love you. Some will leave. Your task is not to become acceptable to everyone. Your task is to become someone you do not have to abandon just to be accepted. And once you stop asking the world to tell you that you are worthy, something incredibly powerful happens. You become free to improve, music, without desperation, love without begging, walk away without collapsing, music, and stand alone without feeling empty. That is where loving yourself, music, first truly begins. Lesson 2: Stop punishing yourself for being human. There is, music, a quiet form of self-destruction that looks like ambition from the outside. Constantly reminding yourself of everything you should have done better. You replay, music, the mistake. You remember the opportunity you wasted. You think about the person you, music, disappointed. You compare who you are today with the person you believe you should already have, music, become. And every time you remember the past, you reopen the wound as if suffering again could somehow change what already happened. But pain is not payment, music, for a mistake. Imagine carrying a heavy stone everywhere you go because of something you did 5 years ago. Every morning you put it on your back. Every afternoon you feel its weight. Every night, music, you sleep beside it. When someone asks why you are carrying it, you say because I deserve to remember what music I did. But the stone does not repair the past. It does not restore the opportunity. It does not change the person you hurt. It simply makes today's journey heavier. That is what music, unresolved shame does to the human mind. Stoicism offers a much harder and more useful response. The Stoics did not teach you to pretend your music mistakes never happened. They taught you to meet reality without adding unnecessary suffering to it. If you made the wrong decision, acknowledge it. If you behaved badly, take responsibility. If there is something you can repair, repair it. But once the lesson has been extracted, music, continuing to punish yourself is not wisdom. It is attachment to a version of yourself that no longer exists. Marcus Aurelius understood that every morning was another opportunity, music, to return to reason. He did not wake up demanding perfection from himself. He reminded himself that human beings make mistakes, music, become irritated, misunderstand things, lose patience, and sometimes fail to live according to their own principles. The question, music, was never whether you would fail. The question was what you would do, music, after the failure. This distinction can change the way you see your entire past. There is a difference, music, between guilt and growth. Guilt says I did something wrong, music, therefore I am bad. Growth says I did something wrong, therefore I have something to understand. One traps you inside an identity. The other gives you a direction. One keeps, music, staring at the wound. The other asks what the wound taught you. Think about a person who once wasted, music, years because of poor decisions. Maybe they neglected their health, destroyed a relationship through their own immaturity, music, abandoned an important dream, or spent years chasing things that never mattered. Years later, they finally, music, wake up and see it clearly. The instinct is often to say, how could I, music, have been so stupid? But that question rarely produces wisdom. A better, music, question is, now that I can see what I could not see then, what will I do with, music, that knowledge? That is the difference between self-respect and self-punishment. Self-respect tells the truth. It does not need to lie to you and say, music, you did nothing wrong. Sometimes you did. Sometimes, music, you were selfish. Sometimes you were weak. Sometimes you ignored the warning signs. Sometimes you hurt people. Loving yourself does not mean protecting yourself from, music, uncomfortable truth. It means becoming strong enough to hear the truth without deciding that you are beyond redemption. A tree does not hate the, music, branch that broke during a storm. It does not spend the next decade staring at the broken place and wishing it, music, had never happened. It continues growing around the wound. The scar becomes, music, part of its structure. Your past can work the same way. Some experiences will leave marks that never completely disappear. But a scar is not evidence that the body failed. Sometimes it is evidence that the body survived. Modern psychology also gives us a reason to be careful with constant self-criticism. When negative, music, self-talk becomes repetitive, the mind can begin treating that internal voice as familiar truth rather than temporary judgment. You stop saying I failed at something and start, music, saying I am a failure. The behavior disappears and the label remains. Then every new mistake, music, becomes evidence supporting the label. A single event becomes an identity, music, and the identity begins controlling future behavior. This is why, music, self-compassion is not weakness. It can actually create the psychological, music, space required for honest change. If every mistake triggers humiliation and self-hatred, music, you become motivated to hide the mistake rather than understand, music, it. But when you can look at yourself and say yes I failed and I am still responsible for becoming, music, better. You can examine your behavior without running from yourself. Epictetus taught a powerful principle. It is not simply what happens that, music, matters but how we respond to what happens. Apply that inwardly. Your past is, music, something that happened. Your relationship with your past is something, music, you can still influence. You cannot go back and rewrite the scene, but you can decide whether that scene becomes a prison or a lesson. So the next time your mind brings an old mistake back to you, do not immediately attack yourself. Sit with it. Ask, what was I unable to see then? What did this experience teach me? What can, music, I repair? What behavior must never be repeated? Then answer those questions, music, honestly. If an apology is needed, apologize. If a habit must change, music, change it. If someone deserves restitution, make it where possible. But after responsibility has been taken, stop, music, confusing punishment with transformation. You do not honor your past by remaining broken, music, because of it. You honor it by refusing to waste what it taught you. And perhaps this is one, music, of the deepest forms of loving yourself first. Being willing to meet the person you used to be without hatred while still having the courage to become someone better. Because you cannot build a peaceful future while constantly putting your present self, music, on trial for the crimes of your past. Learn from who you were. Take responsibility for who you are and then give yourself permission, music, to become who you can still be. Lesson 3: Learn to enjoy your own company. One of the quietest signs that a person has not yet made, music, peace with themselves is this. They cannot sit alone without needing an escape. The moment silence appears, they, music, reach for a screen. The moment they are alone, they search for noise. The moment their, music, thoughts become audible, they distract themselves again. Many people are not afraid of loneliness. They are afraid of meeting themselves without distractions. Music, think about this for a moment. If you spent an entire day with another person who constantly criticized you, compared themselves to others, music, replayed old mistakes, worried about the future, and never appreciated anything in the present, you would eventually feel exhausted. Yet many people live with that voice, music, inside their own minds every day. Then they wonder why being alone feels, music, uncomfortable. The problem is not solitude. The problem is the relationship they have with themselves. The Stoics saw solitude differently. To them, being alone was not emptiness. It was an opportunity to return to clarity. Marcus Aurelius often withdrew into his own thoughts, not to escape life, but to understand it. He believed, music, that a person who can sit quietly with themselves possesses a kind of strength that, music, the world cannot easily take away. Because if your peace depends entirely on constant attention, constant entertainment, music, or constant company, then your peace is fragile. But if you can create peace within yourself, music, you carry it everywhere. Imagine two people walking through life. The first person constantly needs noise, music, around them. They need people to reassure them, distract them, validate them, and fill every, music, empty space. The second person enjoys people but does not, music, depend on them for their identity. They can sit quietly with a book, take a walk alone, think deeply, or spend an evening without stimulation and still feel complete. Which person do you think is more free? Modern life makes this lesson difficult, music, because we are surrounded by endless distractions. Every moment of silence can be replaced, music, with a video, a message, a notification, or another form of escape. But there is a hidden cost, music, to constant distraction. You never learn who you are beneath the, music, noise. You know your routines. You know your responsibilities. You know your roles. But do you know yourself when all of those things are removed? A forest gives us, music, a powerful metaphor. When the wind is strong, the surface of a lake becomes restless and you cannot see what lies beneath it. But when the wind, music, stops, the water becomes still and suddenly the depths become, music, visible. Your mind works the same way. Constant stimulation keeps the surface moving. Silence allows you to see what has been hidden. Your fears, music, your desires, your values, your wounds, and your truth. This is why some people avoid solitude for years. Not because they dislike being alone, music, but because being alone forces honesty. It asks difficult questions. What do I actually, music, want? Why am I unhappy? What am I running from? Who have I become? These questions are uncomfortable, but they are also the beginning of self-standing. Music and self-standing is the foundation of self-love. There is a famous idea, music, in philosophy. If you cannot enjoy your own company, you have become dependent, music, on escape. That does not mean you must isolate yourself from people. Human connection is important. Love, friendship, and community matter deeply. But there is a difference between enjoying connection and needing connection to feel valuable. One is healthy.